The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the East Wing office as Melania Trump sipped her tea. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced down at the screen and raised an eyebrow. It was Nancy Miller, her publicist, calling for the third time that hour. Melania sighed and picked up the phone. "Nancy, what is so urgent?" Melania asked, her accent more pronounced when she spoke in private. "I just got off the phone with a BC," Nancy said, her voice tense. "Jimmy Kimmel wants you on his show. Next week." Melania set her cup down slowly. Jimmy Kimmel. The late-night host had made no secret of his feelings about her husband during the campaign. Even now, 3 months after Donald Trump's inauguration, Kimmel continued his nightly jokes at the president's expense. "And why would I do this?" Melania asked. "That's exactly what I told them," Nancy replied. "But they're being very persistent. They're offering a full segment, 20 minutes minimum. No pre-recorded bits, just a sit-down interview with Kimmel." Melania walked to the window, looking out at the rose garden. Spring was bringing the first blooms to life after a cold winter. Her first spring as First Lady of the United States. So far, she had kept a lower profile than many of her predecessors, maybe too low. "What do you think, Nancy?" she asked. "Honestly, I think it's a trap. Kimmel will try to make you look bad. He'll ask about the controversies, the protests, the things your husband has said." Melania nodded, though Nancy couldn't see her. "Yes, he probably will. So that's a no then." "I'll call them back and decline?" Melania didn't answer right away. She was thinking about the foundation she wanted to launch. The Children's Wellness Initiative she had been planning since before the election. She needed publicity for that. "Good publicity. What if we set conditions?" Melania asked. "Topics he cannot ask about?" There was a pause on the line. "We could try, but Kimmel's people will push back. And even if they agree, there's no guarantee he'll stick to the rules once you're on live TV." "Tell them I am thinking about it," Melania decided. "I will discuss with the communications team." After hanging up, Melania called Jack Bennett, the White House communications director. Jack had worked on Donald's campaign and was one of the few staffers Melania genuinely trusted. Jack arrived at her office 30 minutes later, looking worried. "Kimmel? Seriously?" he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "That's a hard no, Mrs. Trump. That show is hostile territory." "I understand the risks, Jack," Melania replied. "But I need to start being more visible. The foundation launch is in 2 months. Jack ran a hand through his thinning hair. "There are safer options. Good Morning America, Fox and Friends. Even Ellen would be better than Kimmel." "Ellen will not invite me," Melania said simply. "And the safe shows only reach people who already support us. I need to reach the others." Jack looked unconvinced. "The president won't like this. Donald understands television better than anyone. He knows sometimes you have to go into the lion's den." They talked for nearly an hour. Jack brought up every possible downside, every way the appearance could go wrong. Melania listened, but her mind was increasingly made up. This was an opportunity. A risk, yes, but also a chance to show people who she really was, beyond the headlines and the angry tweets. "Call Nancy back," she finally told Jack. "Tell her I will do it, but with conditions. No questions about my son. Limited discussion of specific policies. Focus on my charitable work and initiatives." Jack looked defeated. "I still think this is a mistake, but I'll make the call." Meanwhile, across the country in Los Angeles, Jimmy Kimmel sat in the writer's room with his team. The walls were covered with notes and index cards, ideas for upcoming shows. Sam Collins, his lead producer, was on speakerphone with a BC executives. "So it's really happening?" Kimmel asked when Sam hung up. "She's coming on the show?" Sam nodded, looking as surprised as everyone else. "Apparently so. Her team is sending over a list of conditions. But yes, Melania Trump has agreed to appear next Thursday." The room buzzed with excitement and nervous energy. This was big, potentially huge. For ratings, what are the conditions? Asked Olivia Peters, the head writer. Sam shrugged. Don't know yet. The usual stuff, I imagine. Don't ask about the kid. Don't get too political. Don't get political? She's the First Lady, Olivia said with a laugh. Her existence is political. Kimmel was surprisingly quiet, tapping his pen against the table. We need to be smart about this, he finally said. If we go in too hard, she walks off, and we look like bullies. Too soft, and we look like sellouts. So where's the middle ground? Asked Greg Martinez, the booking producer. We start friendly, Kimmel decided. Make her comfortable. Talk about the White House, what it's like living there. Then we pivot to her background, her own immigrant story. That opens the door to the bigger issues without seeming like we're attacking her directly. The team nodded in agreement. This approach could work. What about a surprise segment? Olivia suggested. Something we don't tell her about in advance? The room went quiet. Everyone looked at Kimmel, who was considering the idea. What did you have in mind? He asked. Olivia smiled. What if we show clips of things she said in the past? That interview where she questioned Obama's birth certificate. Her comments defending her husband's statements about women. Then we ask her to explain the contradictions. Sam looked concerned. That's definitely not what her team is expecting. Which is exactly why we should do it, Olivia argued. This isn't just any celebrity promoting a movie. She's the First Lady. Her husband's policies affect millions of people. We have a responsibility to ask the hard questions. Kimmel was still. Thinking it over, the network will freak out. The network will be thrilled with the ratings, Greg countered. And the clips would all be her own words. It's fair game. After more discussion, they decided to prepare the surprise segment, but make the final call on whether to use it the day of the show. Kimmel wanted to see how the interview was going first. If Melania was being open and genuine, maybe they wouldn't need the ambush. If she was just sticking to carefully rehearsed talking points, then perhaps they would. Back in Washington, Melania's team was preparing her for the appearance. Kate Ward, her personal assistant, was compiling briefing materials on likely questions and suggested responses. Remember to smile, Nancy advised during a prep session, even when the questions get tough. Especially when they get tough, and if he asks something inappropriate. Melania asked. Deflect gracefully, Jack said. Change the subject back to your foundation. Never show anger. That's what they'll be looking for, a clip of you losing your cool that can go viral. Melania nodded. She had been in the public eye for years. She knew how this worked. But this would be different. Before, she had always been by Donald's side, supporting him. This time, she would be on her own, representing herself and her own projects. That night, she mentioned the upcoming appearance to her husband as they had dinner together in the White House residence. Kimmel? Donald frowned. He's not funny. His ratings are terrible. Terrible. His ratings are actually quite good, Melania corrected gently. And this will help with my foundation launch. Donald waved his hand dismissively. Just remember, these people aren't your friends. They'll try to trick you into saying something they can use against us. I know, Melania said. I'll be careful. Later, alone in her room, Melania practiced answers in front of the mirror. She rehearsed her smile, making sure it looked natural, but not overeager. She thought about the foundation, about the children she wanted to help. That was what mattered, not Jimmy Kimmel's jokes or the political games. As the date of the appearance drew closer, both Melania's team and Kimmel's prepared for what each side hoped would be a victory for them. Neither could predict how dramatically the actual interview would veer from their careful plans, or how the unexpected conflict would capture the nation's attention in the days to come. The day of the taping arrived with unusual activity around the ABC studios in Los Angeles. Extra security guards stood at every entrance, Police cars were parked on the street outside. A small group of protesters gathered across the street, holding signs both for and against the First Lady. Inside the studio, the staff moved with nervous energy. This was not a normal show day. The stakes felt higher. The producers had received calls from network executives all morning, checking on preparations and reminding everyone of the importance of this episode. "Everything needs to be perfect," Sam Collins told the staff during the morning meeting. "This is bigger than just another celebrity interview." In the green room, staff members added fresh flowers and made sure everything was spotless. The room, normally used for guests, was deemed too small, so they had converted a conference room instead. It had more space for security and staff. "Is the temperature okay in here?" asked a production assistant named Brenda. "Should we make it warmer?" "It's fine," Sam said, though he had no idea what temperature Melania Trump preferred. "Just make sure we have still water, not sparkling. And those small sandwiches with the crusts cut off." Backstage, Jimmy Kimmel reviewed his notes one last time. He felt a mix of excitement and worry. This episode could be a huge win for the show, or it could become a disaster that would follow him for years. "How are you feeling?" Olivia Peters asked him. "Like I'm about to jump out of an airplane, and I'm not sure if the parachute will open," Kimmel replied. "The surprise segment is ready." "If you want it," Olivia said. "Just give me the signal, and we'll roll the clips." Kimmel nodded but didn't commit either way. "Let's see how it goes first." At 2 o'clock, the call came in. Melania Trump's motorcade had left her hotel and was on its way to the studio. The security team did one final sweep of the building. The audience, already seated, was given extra instructions. "No booing, no shouting out comments," the warm-up comedian told them. "If you can't be respectful, you'll be asked to leave." At exactly 2:47 p.m., the motorcade pulled up to the private entrance. Melania stepped out, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked calm, but those who knew her well could see the tension in her eyes. Nancy Miller walked beside her, whispering last-minute advice. Kate Ward followed behind with a folder of notes. 2 Secret Service agents scanned the area constantly, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. Greg Martinez met them at the door. "Welcome to Jimmy Kimmel Live, Mrs. Trump. We're honored to have you with us today." Melania smiled and shook his hand. "Thank you for having me." They walked through the hallways toward the green room. Staff members stopped what they were doing to watch as the First Lady passed by. Some smiled politely. Others looked away, uncomfortable with her presence in their workplace. In the green room, Melania sat down and checked her appearance in a mirror that Kate handed her. Nancy continued to give advice. "Remember, if he asks something inappropriate, just smile and pivot to talking about the foundation," Nancy said. "And if things get really bad, just say you need to use the restroom and we'll figure out what to do." "I will be fine," Melania said, sounding more confident than she felt. "This is not my first interview." A knock on the door interrupted them. Sam Collins entered with a clipboard in his hand. "Mrs. Trump, we have about 40 minutes before we start taping. Jimmy would like to meet with you briefly, just to go over the general flow of the show." Melania nodded. "That would be fine." Sam looked at Nancy and Kate. "Just Mrs. Trump, please. Jimmy likes to speak with his guests one-on-one before the show." Nancy frowned. This wasn't part of the agreement. "I think it would be better if I joined them." "That's not how we do things here," Sam said firmly. "It's okay, Nancy," Melania decided. "I can handle this." Nancy looked unhappy but didn't argue further. Melania followed Sam down another hallway to a small office. Jimmy Kimmel stood when she entered, offering his hand. "Mrs. Trump, thank you for coming on the show," he said, his tone professional, but not particularly warm. "Mr. Kimmel," Melania replied with a slight nod. "Please call me Jimmy." "Then you must call me Melania." They sat down across from each other. A clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence that followed. "So," Jimmy finally said, "I thought we could talk about how this will go. We'll start with some light conversation about life in the White House, then move on to your foundation work." "Standard interview stuff. That sounds good," Melania said, relaxing slightly. This matched what her team had agreed to. "I might ask a few questions about your background, your journey to becoming First Lady," Jimmy continued. "Personal stuff, but nothing too invasive." Melania nodded again. "I am happy to talk about my path to America. It is a success story." "Great," Jimmy said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I think this will be a good conversation." Back in the green room, Nancy paced nervously. "I don't like this," she told Kate. "We should have insisted on being in that meeting." "She? Be fine," Kate said, though she looked worried too. "Melania is smarter than people give her credit for." Nancy stopped pacing and lowered her voice. "Did you see the board in the writer's room when we walked by? They had something called Melanian contradictions written on it. What do you think?" "That means?" Kate's eyes widened. "You think they're planning something we don't know about?" "I think we need to be prepared for anything," Nancy said grimly. In the control room, the technical staff ran final checks on cameras and microphones. The director, Paul Weber, reviewed camera angles with his team. "Make sure we get plenty of reaction shots," he told the camera operators. "Both Kimmel and Mrs. Trump. If either of them looks uncomfortable, I want to see it." Linda Thompson, the network executive assigned to oversee the episode, stood in the back of the room. She had been sent by ABC's president himself, with instructions to make sure nothing got out of hand. "Remember, we're walking a fine line here," she told Paul. "We want a compelling interview, but not a train wreck." Paul nodded, but his attention was already back on his monitors. In television, compelling and train wreck often looked very similar. At 3:30 p.m., the audience was warmed up and ready. Backstage, Melania received one final touch-up from the makeup artist. Jimmy reviewed his question cards. The floor manager counted down, 2 minutes to places everyone. Melania took a deep breath and squeezed Nancy's hand. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck," Nancy said. "Just remember who you are and why you're here." The audience applauded as the house band played the show's theme song. Jimmy walked out with his usual energy, waving to the crowd. He delivered his monologue, making jokes about current events. He carefully avoided any mention of the president or politics, saving all of that for the interview to come. "Tonight, we have a very special guest," Jimmy said when the monologue ended. "Someone who doesn't do many television appearances. Please welcome the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump." The applause was polite, but not enthusiastic as Melania walked onto the stage. She smiled and waved, looking elegant and composed. She shook Jimmy's hand and sat down in the guest chair. In the control room, everyone watched the monitors intently. Linda Thompson moved closer to Paul Weber, ready to intervene if necessary. In the green room, Nancy and Kate held their breath. "Thank you for being here," Jimmy said. "I know it's not easy for you to do shows like this." "Thank you for having me," Melania replied. "I am happy to be here." Jimmy smiled. "Well, we're just getting started. We'll be right back with more from the First Lady after this break." As the commercials began to play, Melania maintained her smile. But backstage, Olivia Peters was already queuing up the surprise video segment, just in case Jimmy decided to use it. The stage was set for what would soon become one of the most talked about television moments of the year. The red light on the camera blinked back on. The commercial break was over. Jimmy Kimmel turned toward Melania with a friendly smile. The audience waited in silence. "So Melania, you've been First Lady for a few months now. How has the adjustment been, moving into the White House?" Melania crossed her legs at the ankle and placed her hands in her lap, just as she had practiced. It has been a big change, of course. The White House is a very special place with so much history. I feel honored to live there. Is it weird living in a house where tourists come through every day? Jimmy asked. Melania smiled. This was an easy question. We have private areas where the family lives, separate from the parts open to the public. But yes, it is unusual. Sometimes I can hear the tour groups downstairs. The audience laughed softly. In the green room, Nancy nodded with approval. This was going well so far. Your son, Baron, had to change schools when you moved. How has that transition been? Jimmy asked. Nancy frowned. They had specifically asked for no questions about Baron. But before she could say anything, Melania answered smoothly. All children face challenges when they move to a new school. Baron is doing well, but I prefer not to discuss him too much. He deserves his privacy. Jimmy nodded, backing off that topic. Fair enough. Let's talk about your background. You came to the United States as a model, right? From Slovenia? Yes, Melania sighed. I came to America to pursue my modeling career. This country gave me amazing opportunities. When did you become a U.S. citizen? Jimmy asked. In 2006, after many years of living here legally, Melania replied. It was one of the proudest days of my life. Jimmy leaned forward slightly. So you went through the whole immigration process? Green card, citizenship test, all of that, Melania nodded. Yes, I followed all the rules. It was important to me to do things the right way. That's interesting, Jimmy said, his tone shifting subtly. Because your husband has been pretty tough on immigrants. He's called for much stricter policies than what existed when you came to America. In the control room, Linda Thompson tensed up. This was the first hint of politics entering the conversation. Paul Weber signaled to his camera operators to get tight shots of both faces. My husband wants a system that is fair and legal, Melania said carefully. America should welcome people who follow the rules, like I did. But some of the rules he wants to create would have made it harder for someone like you to come here. In the first place, Jimmy pressed. Doesn't that seem a bit contradictory? The audience was completely silent now, watching the exchange with growing interest. In the green room, Nancy stood up. He's going off script, she said to Kate. This wasn't what we agreed to. Melania maintained her calm expression. I think America needs both compassion and rules. We can welcome immigrants while still having strong borders. Jimmy nodded, then made a quick gesture to his producer. That makes sense. Let's talk about your foundation now. I understand you're launching a new initiative. Melania visibly relaxed. This was the topic she had prepared for. Yes, I am starting the Bright Future Foundation, focused on children's well-being. We will work on issues like online bullying, childhood obesity, and access to education. Online bullying is an interesting choice, Jimmy said. What made you focus on that particular issue? Children today face many challenges online, Melania explained. Social media can be very cruel. I want to help create a kinder environment for young people. Jimmy nodded thoughtfully. Some people have pointed out that your husband is pretty active on social media, and his comments can be, well, not very kind sometimes. How do you square that with your anti-bullying campaign? The audience made a soft ooh sound. This was exactly the kind of question they had come to see. In the control room, Linda stepped closer to Paul. Make sure we get her reaction, she whispered. Melania's smile tightened just slightly. I think all adults, including public figures, should be good examples. My work is focused on helping children understand the impact of their words. But doesn't it start at home? Jimmy pressed. Isn't it hard to tell kids not to call people names online when the president does exactly that? Nancy was now standing right by the monitor in the green room, her face tense with worry. This is going south fast, she muttered. My work is separate from my husband's Twitter, Melania said. her accent becoming slightly more pronounced. "I have my own voice and my own projects." Jimmy seemed about to ask another follow-up, but then glanced at his notes and changed direction. "Let's talk about your life in the White House. What's your favorite room?" For the next few minutes, the interview returned to safer ground. Melania described the White House gardens, her favorite foods, and her daily routine. The audience relaxed, and so did Nancy in the green room. "I think we're past the worst of it," she said to Kate, but backstage, Olivia Peters was signaling to Jimmy. It was time for the surprise segment they had planned. During the next commercial break, she approached him as the makeup artist touched up his face. "Are we doing it?" she asked quietly. Jimmy hesitated. The interview had been tense at moments, but overall, Melania had handled herself well. Did they really need to ambush her? "The ratings are already great," Sam Collins said, joining them. "The network is happy. But this is our chance to really make her answer for the contradictions," Olivia argued. "When will we get another opportunity like this?" Jimmy made his decision. "Cue it up, we're doing it." When the show returned from commercial, the tone in the studio had shifted. Jimmy's smile was different now, more determined. "Melania, we've prepared a special segment for you," he said. "I'd like to show you some clips and then get your thoughts on them." In the green room, Nancy's phone buzzed with a message from Jack Bennett back in Washington. "How's it going?" He had texted. Before she could reply, the monitor showed Jimmy turning toward a screen. "Let's watch this together," he said to Elania. The screen lit up with the title, Melania's Greatest Contradictions. Then it cut to a clip of Melania from 2011, questioning President Obama's birth certificate on a talk show. Next came a clip of her defending her husband's comments about women that had been caught on tape during the campaign. The third clip showed her talking about the importance of honesty in a speech, followed immediately by side-by-side videos showing parts of her convention speech that matched Michelle Obama's speech from years earlier. The audience gasped. This was far more direct than anyone had expected. In the control room, Linda Thompson put her hand over her mouth. "Is this approved?" she asked Paul Weber. "Above my pay grade," Paul replied, keeping his eyes on the monitors. The camera cut to Melania's face. Her expression was frozen, but her eyes had darkened. When the clips ended, Jimmy turned to her. "So Melania, how do you explain these contradictions? On one hand, you promote kindness and honesty. On the other hand, these clips show something very different." The studio was completely silent. Everyone waited for her response. In the green room, Nancy was already on the phone with the White House communications team. "They blindsided us," she said urgently. "We need to pull her out now." But on stage, Melania didn't get up to leave. Instead, she sat very still for a long moment. Then she straightened her back and looked directly at Jimmy. "You know," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I agreed to come on this show because I thought we would have an honest conversation. I see now that was a mistake." Jimmy started to respond, but Melania continued. "This is exactly what is wrong with media today. You invite someone to talk, but you already have your story written. You don't really want to hear what I have to say." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the awkward, flustered reaction they had expected. Jimmy tried to regain control. "We just want honest answers to legitimate questions," he said. "No," Melania replied, her voice growing stronger. "You want a moment for your ratings. You want to embarrass me and my family." She uncrossed her ankles and leaned forward slightly. "You call my husband a bully, but what do you call this? Showing edited clips without context? Is this not bullying too?" The commercial break signal flashed, but both Jimmy and Melania ignored it. The producers didn't dare cut away now. This was live television at its most unpredictable. "I think our viewers deserve to know," Jimmy began. "Your viewers deserve the truth," Melania interrupted. not clever editing and gotcha moments. As the tension on stage reached a breaking point, Nancy stood in the green room doorway, ready to rush in and pull Melania away, but she held back, watching with growing surprise as the First Lady fought back in a way no one had anticipated. The red commercial break sign flashed urgently. Paul Weber, the floor director, made frantic cutting motions with his hands. But neither Jimmy nor Melania paid any attention. The moment had gone beyond the normal rules of television. "Mrs. Trump, these clips are your own words," Jimmy said, trying to regain control of the situation. "We didn't edit what you said." "You took things out of context," Melania replied. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes were now flashing with anger. "You show a clip from years ago, but not what I have said since then. You don't show how people grow and change." In the control room, Linda Thompson was on the phone with network executives. "Should we cut to commercial anyway?" she asked. "Are you kidding?" came the reply. "The ratings are through the roof. Let it play out." The audience sat in stunned silence. This was not the awkward, embarrassed Melania they had expected to see. The woman on stage was fighting back. "Let me ask you something, Jimmy," Melania continued. "Have you ever changed your mind about anything? Have you ever said something you later regretted?" Jimmy shifted in his seat. "Of course, but you don't show those moments on your show, do you?" Melania interrupted. "You only show mine." In the green room, Nancy watched the monitor with her mouth slightly open. "I've never seen her like this," she whispered to Kate. Kate nodded. "She's always been stronger than people think." On stage, Jimmy tried a different approach. "Let's talk about this speech controversy. Your convention speech had whole sections that matched Michelle Obama's speech from years earlier. That wasn't taken out of context." Melania took a deep breath. This was a sore subject. A speechwriter made a terrible mistake. I took responsibility for it, even though the words were not mine. The staff member offered to resign, but I forgave her. Isn't forgiveness something we should value? Jimmy looked down at his notes, then back up at Melania. "What about the birther controversy? You questioned President Obama's birth certificate on national television." "Yes, I did," Melania admitted. "And I was wrong. I listened to people I trusted, and I repeated things without enough research. I would not do that today." The audience murmured. This was the most direct answer she had given about that controversial moment. "So you admit you were wrong about that?" Jimmy asked, sounding surprised by her candor. "People make mistakes," Melania said simply. "The important thing is to learn from them." For a moment, it seemed like the interview might turn in a more positive direction. But then Jimmy looked off stage, where Olivia Peters was signaling him to push harder. "What about your husband's comments about women?" Jimmy asked. "The tape where he said very inappropriate things. You defended that behavior. Do you still defend it now?" The audience tensed up again. This was the most sensitive topic yet. Melania's face hardened. "I have answered that question many times. I said then that his words were unacceptable, but that I had forgiven him. That is between a husband and wife. But as First Lady, don't you have a responsibility to stand up against that kind of talk about women?" Jimmy pressed. "And as a television host, don't you have a responsibility to be fair?" Melania shot back. "To tell the whole story, not just the parts that make for good ratings?" Jimmy leaned back, surprised by her directness. "We're trying to have an honest conversation here." "No," Melania said firmly. "An honest conversation would include questions about my foundation work, about the children I am trying to help, about the good things I want to do as First Lady. But instead, you only want to talk about controversies." In the control room, Linda Thompson made a decision. "Cut to commercial," she ordered Paul. "Now." The commercial break sign lit up again, this time with an urgent buzzing sound that couldn't be ignored. Jimmy held up a finger to the audience. "We'll be right back after these messages," he said. forcing a smile. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling, Nancy rushed onto the stage. "We're leaving," she said to Melania. "This interview is over." Jimmy stood up. "Mrs. Trump, I apologize if you feel ambushed. That wasn't our intent." "What exactly was your intent?" Melania asked coolly. Before Jimmy could answer, Sam Collins hurried over. "Mrs. Trump, please. We still have 10 minutes of the segment left. The audience wants to hear more from you." "The audience wants drama," Nancy corrected him. "They're not getting it at our expense." Melania remained seated, thinking. Everyone around her waited anxiously for her decision. "If I stay," she finally said to Jimmy, "we talk about my foundation work. No more surprise clips. No more questions about old controversies." Jimmy hesitated, looking at Sam and Olivia. The surprise segment had backfired. Instead of flustering Melania, it had given her the moral high ground. But cutting the interview short would look even worse for the show. "Agreed," Jimmy said. "Foundation work only." Nancy looked skeptical. "I don't trust them, Melania. They've already broken their word once." "One more chance," Melania decided. "But if there is one more trick, we walk off immediately." In the audience, people were checking their phones during the break. News of the confrontation was already spreading on social media. Videos of Melania standing up to Jimmy were being shared widely. "She's crushing him," one audience member whispered to another. "I didn't expect her to be so fierce," the other replied. When the commercial break ended, the cameras returned to find both Jimmy and Melania still in their seats. Jimmy's smile looked strained now. Melania's expression was calm but determined. "Welcome back," Jimmy said to the viewers. "We're here with First Lady Melania Trump, who is about to tell us about her new foundation." Melania nodded slightly, acknowledging the change in direction. "The Bright Future Foundation will focus on 3 main areas," she began. "First, helping children stay safe and kind online. Second, promoting healthy eating and exercise habits. And third, expanding access to quality education for all children." Jimmy nodded, asking follow-up questions about the foundation's goals and plans. For several minutes, the interview proceeded as originally planned. The tension in the studio began to ease. In the control room, Linda Thompson relaxed slightly. "I think we've salvaged this," she said to Paul. But backstage, Olivia Peters was frustrated. "This is boring now," she complained to Greg Martinez. "We had her on the ropes, and Jimmy backed off. What did you expect?" Greg asked. "She was winning that exchange." "We need one more moment," Olivia insisted. "Something to make the headlines." "Tomorrow," she scribbled a note on a card and handed it to a production assistant. "Give this to Jimmy during the next talking point," she instructed. On stage, Melania was explaining how her foundation would work with schools to prevent online bullying. Jimmy was nodding along, asking appropriate questions. The card arrived in his hand during a moment when Melania was speaking. He glanced down at it quickly. The note read, "Ask about Ivanka's role in the White House versus her role, tension?" Jimmy frowned slightly. This was exactly the kind of provocative question they had just agreed to avoid. But before he could decide whether to use it, Melania noticed his expression change as he read the note. She stopped mid-sentence. "What is that?" she asked, pointing to the card. "Just a reminder about the time," Jimmy said quickly, turning the card over. But Melania had seen enough. "Is that another surprise question?" she asked, her voice sharp. "No, it's just," Jimmy began. "Show me the card," Melania demanded. The audience went completely silent. In the control room, Linda Thompson put her head in her hands. "Oh no," she whispered. Jimmy hesitated, then reluctantly handed the card to Melania. She read it, her face darkening. Then she looked up, first at Jimmy, then directly into the camera. "This is exactly what I was talking about," she said, holding up the card for the camera to see. Even after agreeing to discuss my foundation work, they still want to create drama between me and my stepdaughter. She stood up and unpinned her microphone. This interview is over. Jimmy stood too, looking genuinely distressed now. Mrs. Trump, I wasn't going to ask that question. Please, but Melania was already walking off the stage, the microphone left on her chair. Nancy quickly joined her, putting an arm around her shoulders. The audience began to murmur loudly, some people standing to get a better view of what was happening. We'll be right back, Jimmy said weakly to the camera, but his voice was nearly drowned out by the commotion in the studio. As Melania and her team walked quickly through the backstage area toward the exit, staff members moved out of their way, staring in shock. The First Lady of the United States had just walked off one of the biggest talk shows on television. And somehow, against all expectations, she had done it with her dignity intact. The black SUV carrying Melania and her team sped away from the ABC studio. Inside, no one spoke for several minutes. The only sound was Nancy rapidly typing on her phone, already working to get ahead of the story. Finally, Kate broke the silence. Are you okay? Melania looked out the window at the passing streets of Los Angeles. Yes, she said quietly. I am fine. You were amazing in there, Nancy said, looking up from her phone. No one expected you to stand up to him like that. Melania turned to her. I surprised myself too. Back at the studio, chaos reigned. The show had cut to an extended commercial break. Jimmy sat in his office, his head in his hands. Sam Collins and Olivia Peters stood nearby, both looking shell-shocked. What were you thinking? Jimmy asked Olivia, his voice tight with anger. We had an agreement. Foundation questions only. The show was becoming boring, Olivia defended herself. We needed one more moment. Well, we got one, Jimmy said bitterly. Just not the one we wanted. The studio audience had been told the show was experiencing technical difficulties. Some people were leaving, while others stayed in their seats, talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. In the control room, Linda Thompson was on the phone with network executives. Yes, she really walked off, she explained. No, I don't think she's coming back. Paul Weber looked at his watch. We still have 15 minutes of airtime to fill. What's the plan? Linda covered the phone with her hand. Get Jimmy ready to go back on. He'll have to explain what happened and then fill time somehow. When the show finally returned from its extended break, Jimmy sat alone on the stage. The audience quieted as he looked directly into the camera. So, as you probably noticed, the First Lady has left the building, he said, attempting to make a joke. The audience responded with awkward laughter. I want to be clear about what happened. Jimmy continued, his tone more serious now. There was a miscommunication between our staff and Mrs. Trump's team about the nature of the interview. That's on us. We should have been more upfront about our plans. In the green room, watching on the monitor, Sam winced. Jimmy was taking full responsibility on live television. I hope Mrs. Trump will accept my apology, Jimmy concluded. And I hope she'll come back someday to tell us more about her foundation work, which really does sound important. He then pivoted to introducing the next guest, a movie star who had been scheduled to appear later in the show. The star looked uncomfortable as he took the seat Melania had vacated just minutes earlier. Meanwhile, Melania's motorcade arrived at her hotel. Security guards cleared a path through a small crowd of reporters who had somehow already heard about the incident. Cameras flashed as Melania walked into the building, her face composed and revealing nothing. In her suite, she kicked off her shoes and sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone was buzzing constantly with messages, but she ignored it for now. She needed a moment to process what had happened. The hotel room phone rang. It was the White House operator. Mrs. Trump, I have the president calling for you. Melania took a deep breath. Put him through. Melania. Donald's voice boomed through the phone. I just heard what happened, It's all over the news already. I'm sorry if I caused problems, Melania said. Problems? Are you kidding? Donald sounded almost gleeful. You showed them exactly who you are. Strong, smart, not taking their garbage. The clips are going viral. Even people who hate me are saying you were treated unfairly. Melania felt a wave of relief. She had worried he might be angry about the negative attention. Jack Bennett is on the other line, Donald continued. He wants to know if you'll make a statement or if the White House should release something official. No statement tonight, Melania decided. Let them talk about it. I will speak when I'm ready. After hanging up, she turned on the television. Every news channel was showing clips from the interview. Political commentators were analyzing every word, every gesture. Some criticized her for walking out. Others praised her for standing up to what they called gotcha journalism. Nancy came in with her laptop. Social media is exploding, she reported. The hashtag MELANIA walks out is trending #1 worldwide. What are people saying? Melania asked. It's mixed, but there's a lot of support, Nancy said, sounding surprised. Many women, even those who don't support your husband, are defending you. They're saying you were ambushed and handled it with class. Kate entered with a stack of printed messages. We're getting requests for interviews from every major network. They all want your side of the story. Melania shook her head. No more. Interviews for now. The next morning, Jimmy Kimmel's ratings were announced. The episode had been the most watched in the show's history, but the publicity wasn't entirely positive. Media critics were questioning his tactics. Even some of his usual supporters thought he had gone too far. On his personal Twitter account, Jimmy posted, I owe the First Lady an apology. Last night didn't go as planned, and that's on me. I hope to make it right someday. The White House communications team, led by Jack Bennett, gathered to discuss strategy. They sat around a conference table, watching clips from the interview and reading media reports. This could have been a disaster, Jack said. Instead, it's turning into a win. People are seeing a different side of Melania, strong, dignified, not afraid to stand up for herself. So what's our next move? Asked a young staff member. Jack looked thoughtful. We let this play out for a few days. No official statements yet. Then, when Melania returns to D.C., we schedule a solo press event about her foundation. That's what she wanted to talk about in the first place. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Melania had one more stop before flying back to Washington. She had arranged to visit a local school that had implemented an anti-bullying program. No press was invited. This was not for publicity. In a classroom filled with 10-year-olds, Melania sat in a small chair, listening as the children explained how they had created their own rules for online behavior. One little girl with braids. SHOUE, Melania, a poster they had made. See, Mrs. Trump? Our #1 rule is, before you type, think how it would feel if someone said that to you. Melania smiled. That is a very wise rule. I think even grown-ups should follow it. A boy with glasses raised his hand. My mom said you were on TV last night and some man was mean to you. Did he break the rules? The teacher looked horrified and started to interrupt, but Melania held up her hand. Sometimes, she said carefully, even adults forget to be kind. The important thing is what we do next. Do we get angry and mean back, or do we stand up for ourselves with dignity? With dignity, several children called out. That's right, Melania said. Always with dignity. 3 months later, Melania stood at a podium in the White House Rose Garden. She was officially launching the Bright Future Foundation. Cameras clicked as she spoke about her plans to help children navigate the challenges of growing up in a digital world. After the presentation, a reporter raised her hand. Mrs. Trump, since the Jimmy Kimmel incident, your approval ratings have risen 15 points. Some people are calling it a turning point for your time as First Lady. Do you see it that way? Melania considered the question. The Kimmel episode seemed distant now, almost like it had happened to someone else. In the months since, she had found her voice in a way she hadn't before. She had given more speeches, visited more schools, met with more families. She had become more comfortable in her role as First Lady. "I believe every experience teaches us something," she replied. "That night taught me that I am stronger than I knew. But more importantly, it reminded me why my work matters. Children are watching how we treat each other. They learn from our example." Later that day, during a quiet moment in the White House residence, Melania checked her phone and saw a news alert. Jimmy Kimmel had just announced that his show would be starting a new segment focused on highlighting positive stories and acts of kindness. The announcement didn't mention Melania by name, but the timing seemed significant. She smiled slightly and set the phone down. Sometimes the most powerful statements were the ones you didn't have to make out loud. Sometimes just walking away with your head held high said everything that needed to be said. In America, she had told those schoolchildren months ago, we all have the right to speak our minds and the right to walk away from conversations not worth having. It had become her most quoted line, appearing on everything from t-shirts to coffee mugs. Not because it was clever or politically charged, but because it expressed something simple and true that resonated with people on all sides: the power to choose which conversations were worth having, the wisdom to know when to speak up and when to walk away, the courage to do both with dignity. These were the lessons Melania hoped to teach the children of America. And somewhat unexpectedly, the lessons she had taught herself.